Well, hi everybody. It's Joe Chaffee here on this Friday night, the 21st of December, 2018. Winter has arrived, and of course, with it, we've had probably the most unwinter-like storm occurring up and down the eastern seaboard. The rain, especially in my area, eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England, has been especially hard. Some areas 3 inches or more, a lot of flash flooding. We had gusts along some coastal areas of Long Island, wind gusts up to 60, 65 miles an hour earlier this morning, but the winds have not been an issue really since. They dropped off pretty rapidly. We're going to take a look at the rainfall amounts up and down the eastern seaboard, this storm having such a large impact. And of course, we have travel issues going on. That is making things a bit problematic. I just want to take this opportunity, by the way, we're going to welcome aboard our several different groups that will be joining us. First off, we want to welcome the folks from South Central Pennsylvania and North Central Maryland, courtesy of the SS Storm Chase and Forecast team. I do posting there from time to time, and thanks for being on here tonight and you guys getting through the rains that you got, and you've got some more happening, so we'll just have a little bit more work to do with regards to that. Want to say hi to we want to say hi to the folks from Angry Ben's Angry Weather page on Facebook. Ben operates my nycweathernow.com site. Also, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut Stormwatch page, and thanks for joining us. And, of course, my own Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Chaffee. I just want to send out a quick notification to the folks on my weather app, which this way they know that we're on. 7 p.m. And I'm almost done, folks. I usually type this out beforehand, but one forgot. So just bear with me. So here we go. So we're going to send it all out. This will give everybody a moment to just kind of get settled. And also, I want to say, because this is Friday going into a weekend where a lot of you may be away, so this is you may take a few days off from the live streams, and I may actually take a bit of a break as well. So I just want to say have a safe Christmas Eve and Christmas Day in your travels. Looks like the weather at least is going to be calming down for the weekend. We have no major storms to deal with here in the eastern part of the United States now that the bulk of it is done. Now I have, before we get to the weather part, I have 2 poems that I wrote a couple of years ago. I'm going to do the one that is jovial first, and the other one is a bit more serious. We'll do toward the end. This I think will apply to many of the snow lovers. This is my version of "'Twas the Night Before Christmas," which is the snow lovers version. All right, so here we go. "'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the east, not a snowflake was flying, not one in the least. Snow lovers were checking inside of a stocking to see if Santa would leave them some blocking. The pattern, you see, is very complex because of the northernmost polar vortex. While some models show the pattern will switch, there's always a model that puts up a hitch. The weenies all lined up alongside a bridge and threaten to jump because of the ridge. But whether it changes or just stays the same, the day-to-day weather will always remain a challenge to forecast, for which is your call. From Joe Chaffee, The Wish. Merry Christmas to all." Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. If you're a snow weenie, I think you will appreciate it. And then I'll do the other one a bit later on. So let's get started with what's going on tonight, as we have a satellite loop that pretty much shows it all. The circulation of this storm is pretty large. It's affecting weather everywhere east of the Mississippi and down into Florida, where it was a dry day today, but a very windy day. The core of the storm now moving up into central Pennsylvania with the upper low. You see the whole trough is beginning to lift northward, but the flow along the East Coast being strong southerly has created some problems in that the rain is continuing to the east of New York City over Long Island and New England. So we have a few more hours of work to do there, and in New England even more than just a few hours as you go up into central and northern New England. And to the west, near where the upper low is, we have rain, thunderstorms going on right now through much of central and western Pennsylvania on up into western New York. We have some snow in some of the higher elevations down in West Virginia and in Western Virginia. So it's a matter of time before this just all pulls away to the northeast, and finally we start to see some genuine improvement. By the way, we do have activity going on with some moisture coming into the west. You can see actually another subtropical feed beginning to move across Baja and into parts of the southwest. So likely that is going to be setting the table for the next weather system down the road. In the meantime, we've got the watches and warnings that are up at the moment in the east. We're looking at, we still have actually quite a few wind advisories down from Virginia southward into Georgia and Florida. The whole state was under a wind advisory, by the way, but now we're seeing some of those advisories coming down. We have still some flood watches for parts of northeastern PA and northern Pennsylvania. I spoke to a friend of mine I'm sorry, I didn't speak to. He commented on my video, my buddy Derek Wood, who lives up in Halstead, Pennsylvania, not too far from Binghamton, New York, and he said that the Susquehanna River was so high. He can't remember the last time it was as high as what he's seen it from all the rain that has gone on, and they're still dealing with some more rain there. You still have flood watches up through much of New England, various flood warnings that are up because of the heavy rains that we've had. So we're seeing those in parts of New Jersey, Connecticut, and into Massachusetts. Winter weather advisories in a narrow band going down into southwest PA, into eastern West Virginia, westernmost Virginia counties there, and into the counties of western North Carolina, and even down into the counties of some counties in the northeasternmost Georgia. We're probably talking about elevated areas here, by the way, for the most part. You're probably going to have to go at least up 1,500 feet or more to find anything. In the meantime, out in the west, we're starting to see the first winter storm watches going up in parts of northeastern California, and a narrow band of winter weather advisories in western Oregon and into western Washington as the next weather system begins to make its appearance onto the west coast. So now, if I had it up there, I had my little window all set to go, and I've kind of lost it. So, oh, there it is. Okay, so let's, at this stage, let me bring this up to the top. William Huber, by the way, thank you so much for hitting Super Chat tonight. Really appreciate it greatly. It'll get me a cigar for Christmas, and thank you so much. I'm going to try to see if I can at least pop the chat out so I'm not abandoning you folks for a long period of time. I wish there was a way I could just kind of pin it on the window here so that it's less problematic for me, but unfortunately that impacts everything else that I'm doing. So I think first things first, what I want to do is we're going to take a look at the rainfall amounts that have occurred with all of this. And by the way, I'm using this tool from NOAA. It's nowcast.noaa.gov. It's a great interactive tool, so I strongly recommend it. If you guys want to take a look at this after we're done, you can do a lot of things, including putting watches and warnings up, and satellites and radars, and putting it all on one interactive screen. I think it's a really, really cool thing. And I just put the link up for you guys on the chat board. By the way, I also want to just a big hello to everybody. I see all the regulars are here tonight, and good to see you, of course. Janine Poulian, welcome aboard. I think you might be new. Augustine Alberti, you also have a great Christmas. Nice to see new folks on the board. It's great that you guys want to get in here, participate in the conversation. Joshua Pan, haven't seen you in a while. I see you got questions, and we will come. I'll get to those questions. I already see one of them that I'm going to tell you right now. I have no idea Clairaut's theorem. That's a little. You got to remember, I've been out of school since 1982, so I'm not versed on everything here. So I'll run that by my colleague Joe Rayo. Perhaps he could jar a memory of in my head regarding that, but I'll come back to you in just a second. So I've plotted on this chart the rainfall amount. So the red areas are all basically 2 inches or more, and you get into some of those purple areas in parts of Florida left over from yesterday from those thunderstorms. This is where we had some 5-inch plus amounts, but you can see how extensive the rain was up and down pretty much everybody from the Ohio Valley and Tennessee Valley down to the central Gulf states eastward throughout much of Florida, all of Florida, getting at least an inch to an inch and a half of rain, and you've got all these pockets of 2 and 3 inches or more, and it goes all the way up into northern New England. So this storm really having impact. We even see that impact, by the way, extending into parts of southeastern Canada as you head up toward the St. Lawrence River and on up toward Montreal and into Quebec province. Even there, we're seeing mostly rain out of this. This is how warm this whole system was in the east. We had absolutely no cold air to speak of. And with respect to the radar this evening, here's the latest radar view. And you can see we still have some echoes to work through the area east of New York City coming up from off the ocean. And then we have the area that is sitting to the west of New York City out in Pennsylvania, points west. And here we have some thunderstorms on my radar for WS that we use from WSI, the radars that a lot of the TV stations use on the air. I was looking at it a little while ago, and there were a ton of lightning strikes going on in the last couple of hours from this. This is all part of that cold upper low, all the energy and support that's out to the west. The actual surface low with this is sitting in central Pennsylvania and intensifying, and we're just kind of waiting for all this low to just lift northward and finally start getting things moving more west to east. That's really going to be the frustrating part about this during the overnight and into tomorrow, is that the system is moving more north than it is east. So it's going to just take time to basically get it out of the way. I think we're going to spend much of the night just doing some very, very slow improvement in our weather conditions. Oh, Janine, you're in Quebec. That's awesome. Great. I love it. We do have a number of folks that watch from southeastern Canada. Most of them, we have a few regulars from Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, and it's great. We'll put up the Canadian maps a little later on when we do the models and taking a look at where we are going with all of this. Okay, I just want to general question. Just Joshua, just going back to your question, that the one I think I'm going to try and answer here. Fronts generally thought of as discontinuities in temperature or temperature gradient. Yeah, I mean, both those phrases describe what weather fronts are. You don't have rather than have sort of a smooth, gentle change in temperature over a long distance, you wind up with gradients that develop in the temperature with very cold on one side and very warm on the other. And this is, that's kind of the simplified version. So the answer to your question is yes. That's pretty much what they are. Boundaries between two air masses where you probably would see sharp changes, and we're giving a very broad answer to your question, by the way. Large changes in temperatures over relatively short distances. That would really describe describes the front. The leading edge of that, you'll probably, for example, ahead of a cold front, you might have uniform temperatures, say in the 60s and 70s, and then behind the front, over a short distance, you will go from those 60s down to 20s. So that boundary zone where you start to see the most rapid fall of the temperatures, that would be right ahead of where the frontal boundary is. I think that kind of covers what you're asking about. And I'm sure, Charles Baker, with all the rain, yes, lily pads and mushrooms, stuff you often see in the spring and summer and into the fall after long rounds of heavy rain. It wouldn't shock me. But this warm air that's coming up today is going to be short-lived, because we are going to see temperatures trend back down closer to average over the coming days. Boy, you guys are getting awfully technical here, Reaver. Quasi-geostrophic differential equations in college. I prefer. Let me put it this way. I've preferred to block all of those out of my brain. Okay, after having dealt with them, I've kind of blanked it out. Yeah, I mean, the differential equations and the thermodynamics and the dynamics courses are, very, very math intensive. But it was a long time ago. All right, so back to the radar, folks. Down through the south, you get that changeover to snow in elevated areas down through Virginia. This is part of that bottom edge of that trough, the back edge of that trough now swinging around. That's where you're getting, what we would call the dynamic cooling, do-it-yourself cold air. That's probably going to produce some accumulating snows in this region. Not a whole lot, because this is going to be pulling out relatively quickly later on tonight. But again, I'm thinking you probably have to go up at 1,500 feet or more. Not too much else is happening. Sorry, didn't mean to do that. Not too much is happening. We'll check out the west. We do have a little bit of activity in parts of the Rockies and in northeastern Nevada, but nothing exceptional. The northwest is probably getting ready for some rain, just coming on into range off the west coast of Washington. We've got some precip moving across North Dakota, moving along there and into eastern Montana, and we have a little bit of activity coming off Lake Huron into the lower peninsula, the northwestern part of the lower peninsula of Michigan. And as we telegraphed yesterday with all of this, rain going all the way up into Maine and to Caribou and beyond. One of my Patreon regulars is in Maine, and he was he was rather surprised to see just how far north the warm air got with this. If you remember, we've been talking about that positive East Pacific oscillation being strongly positive is pretty much that signature that has been flooding the U.S. and southern parts of Canada with warmer Pacific air. And we're going to need to see that adjust, or we're going to need to see the NAO get a lot stronger. I think we'll see the latter happen before the EPO goes negative. And we'll address that in just a bit. Now, the surface map tonight kind of shows what's happening with the surface low, which is now down to a 980, if my eyes don't deceive. Yes, it's a 986 low that we have right in central Pennsylvania. And you might not be able to see it too well unless you're looking at this live stream on a big screen, but you can see all the 60s ahead of it. There's a front that is swinging through Maryland and into southwestern, into that small corner there in central PA, down into Virginia. That front is swinging around. That's going to turn the winds around more to the southwest, and then we're going to have to wait for the whole trough to swing through and turn those winds westerly and then northwesterly. That will start to bring in some colder air going forward. And again, we'll put that cold air in quotes because the air behind the front is not really overly cold. We've got some 20s and teens back through the lakes and on up into Minnesota and into the Dakotas. That snow that we showed you in North Dakota is actually along this stationary frontal boundary, and there's a bit of a high that is trying to nose down from central Canada here. You see some temperatures that are running below 0 and single digits. It's cold air, but it's not super cold. But it is going to at least help to trend things colder in the coming days across the across much of the eastern U.S. Now, time to go look at the GFS as to where we are headed. And I actually started with the last map. I'm going to tell you, by the way, when we start looking at the long range, let me just say it right now off the bat. I think I mentioned this yesterday, so I'll say it again. With all the things that are going on way up at the top of the atmosphere with the stratosphere, with what's going to be happening in the next 10 days, I would be very careful putting any faith in the GFS long range. We already have, we don't have a whole lot of faith in it to begin with, but I would say we are going to need to have even less faith in it after next week goes by, because I think the models are going to are going to start sniffing out what's happening in the stratosphere and how it's going to ultimately, I think, translate into the bottom of the atmosphere. And that's a process that's going to take about 10 days to 2 weeks to play out. So look for models to, as we get we start getting closer to that first week of January, look for models to start moving chess pieces around a bit differently from run to run. I don't know where this is all going to wind up. Frankly, I'm quite fascinated by this whole stratospheric warming event that's going to be going on, that the folks that follow it deem it a very important development in the overall winter pattern. I've been doing this long enough to know that sometimes things go awry, and what you think might happen may wind up turning into something else. But I'm you know, the folks that work with this stuff all the time, I trust their opinions. So I'm learning. I'm the student here when it comes to this, and I think this is going to be a good opportunity for all of us to learn together. So the storm in the east lifts up and out by tomorrow morning. It's sitting up in southeastern Quebec, and you've got a 979 low. You get a changeover to snow on the backside there as you head down into New York State. Probably some lake effect will be going on off Lake Ontario on the southern shores, Syracuse, Rochester, for example, down into parts of northern PA, some scattered snow showers, and a gusty wind. So if you're traveling up and down the East Coast, there probably will be some delays due to gusty winds. Nothing crazy, but it'll be, you know, every bit of sustained 15 to 25 with gusts up into the low and mid 30s. And put that on top of a big travel day, and you might have an issue. In the west, much of the rest of the country really is fairly quiet. You got some pockets of precip, a little snow up in northwestern Minnesota, northeastern North Dakota, but it's dry over much of the nation on Saturday, and a little action up in the Pacific Northwest, which gets a bit busier as we go into Saturday night and Sunday, which is another travel day. But no major storms here over the weekend to contend with. But we do have a weak disturbance, if you follow this along, that low that comes into northern Minnesota, drops southeastward over the Great Lakes, and you get a little bit of moisture. There are a couple of short waves running around in the upper flow, and the models are now, all of the models have some kind of precip, light precip here for Sunday night into early Monday morning. Some of the models are a little colder than others. Some of them have snow down to about New York City. Others have it further north and west basically along the I-84 corridor north. Either way, it's a weak system. If it winds up being a little colder further south, it's a cheap thrill for snow lovers in my view, because we don't have a lot of low-level cold air here to play with. We're seeing our temperatures trend down, but we don't have a lot. It's not like we're going from 60 to 20. We're going from 60 to 50 to 40 to 32, 33. So it's not a cold enough push. And again, we're not talking about any big deal here in terms of moisture. Most of the models are generating under 0.2 of an inch, and the vast majority have even less than 1/10 of an inch. So a coating to an inch or two, perhaps that might be about the max here, unless one of these one of the short waves decides to act up and do something that is not being indicated. Let's see. Just trying to. I'm just keeping tune with everybody on the chat board tonight. Let's see. I know, Charlie, you want some frost. The cold air's coming. I get it. All of the maps are leaning towards snow now. Well, for central PA anyway. Well, certainly on the backside of what's happening, Sierra sites for tomorrow, but it doesn't really amount to much. And the thing for Sunday night, Monday, again, looks like a light event. Although the accumulations up in interior New York and northern PA might be a bit more. Maybe there it might be a 1 to 3. Elevated areas might get a little bit more than that. This moves out. We're done. It's nice for Christmas Eve. Actually, your white Christmas is going to be more in the west because we have this low dropping down off the Pacific into Southern California. So there probably will be some snow with a cold push moving southward through Nevada and parts of eastern California there. Even having some precip in and around Las Vegas, southern Utah. So these areas with a low that's dropping down southeastward with energy that's dropping with the trough there, we are going to see some snow in that part of the country. But it won't be until the middle part of next week. We're going to start to see low pressure come out of the southern plains again, the central Rockies, southern central plains, and it's going to try to push northeastward. The low is going to eventually encounter blocking because we do have a negative NAO signature. So that low goes pretty far to the west into Iowa. The primary weekends kind of translates eastward from there. But as far as the east is concerned, here's where you're probably going to see maybe some areas this time around have some snow at the start. And for interior in central northern New England, this could be more snow than anything else. I don't think this is going to be one where it goes to rain all the way up to Caribou, because there is cold air that's going to be draped across southern Canada later next week because of the negative NAO that'll keep that low from running up the same way this one did. After that, I think this is where I would start to say, you know what, let's try and watch this evolve from run to run with everything that's going on in the stratosphere. You do have actually a pretty strong cold high coming into the plains right as the new year arrives, and another low runs up into to the northeast, bringing rain again all the way up to Caribou. But then it does turn colder, and we do see a couple of systems in the southern tier here of the jet stream as we head into the longer range. But I would be really cautious. I would be more cautious than usual, and I'm usually pretty skeptical about stuff that we see beyond days 7 and 8 going into the long term. So I want to go to the stratosphere. We're going to go way up because I want to show you what's happening here. Really, you guys should go on Twitter. If you're on Twitter, to follow Dr. Judah Cohen. He's tweeting about this multiple times every day of what the models have been showing. And by the way, with regards to this, the stratosphere, where planes fly, we're talking at least 6.5 miles up and beyond. The air in the stratosphere is very stable. Temperatures increase with height. once you get through the tropopause or the troposphere and you go into the stratosphere, you have temperatures increasing with height. So that creates a very stable environment. So planes like to fly up there because it's not bumpy at all. But the drivers up here are usually just one big low and one big high. And that's what we have right now. And if you kind of look at, clockwise winds around the low and counterclockwise around the high, you basically are seeing the tight westerly flow or it's hard for me to tell what direction that is, but northwesterly flow that's running across the Arctic region. All the cold air, all right, is pretty much being contained in a sense underneath this big upper low in the stratosphere. I think that's probably the easiest way to describe it. And the engine here is going to be driving all the weather systems that you're going to see in the lower part of the atmosphere. So the fact that the polar vortex, as we go forward, again, remember we were talking about warm air from Africa that sweeps around. You can follow that. I'm going to just back it up again. Just follow that brown spot. Look in the upper left. That's warm air, sweeps around. And it pretty much attacks the polar vortex, causing it to weaken. And this is such a strong warming event that's occurring in the stratosphere. The folks who follow it say that this may be the warmest attack that has been observed. And the records don't go that far back, but since NASA's been around. And there you can see what happens to the polar vortex here. It gets stretched and splits in two, with one polar vortex, part of it dropping down between Greenland and Labrador, and the other one kind of migrating back over toward northern Europe and into Siberia. So if you just kind of follow the logic here, you've got the vortex split. It's going to mean a flow that it's going to probably try and drive colder air from the Arctic regions into the eastern part of the United States with this type of upper air pattern that is setting up. And what's kind of interesting to me too is that the vortex that sets up between Labrador and Greenland is actually stronger than the vortex that is setting up in Siberia. I'm going to have to tweet Dr. Cohen about this. I want to ask him, if we should derive if we should derive any meaning from that view that the vortex on the American side, on the North American side, is going to be stronger than the one up in Siberia. Now, on the last day of this is at Sunday, July 6th. The split actually begins to happen about a week from now. So we're inside the time frame where you can gain more confidence that this event is going to take place. The other thing that brings a lot of confidence to this is the fact that when we looked at, now I'm going to look at the new one, and I'll see if it's out, and the new one also, this is the ensembles, by the way. The ensembles are doing it, and that is kind of remarkable in a way. I don't know how many members there are up at that level, but the ensembles are doing the split and showing it. So this is remarkable. The European 10 millibar maps, which I can't see, but apparently other folks can. The European's doing it. The Canadian is doing it even more aggressively. And even some of the climate models, which the CSV, I think that's what it is. Hang on. You can see those on Tropical Tidbits, by the way. I don't believe that there's no 10 millibar. Oh, is there? Oh, there is actually. And it hasn't been updated yet. Let's go to the one before that. Oh, they're not updated in here, so I can't see them. But but Dr. Cohen did mention that even the climate models going out show all of this. So I think we're going to be paying very close attention. This happened? We had this occur last February, right on President's Day weekend. And we saw, and I've said this repeatedly, we saw what happened when we got to March with the four nor'easters that occurred in the eastern part of the U.S. I don't know what I don't know is, and I don't think anybody knows this, is what is going to be the practical outcome of what's going to be going on in the stratosphere. I think that really is the big question. For me, I find it very fascinating to just watch the whole thing play out. Reaver, your question is a good one. Does the split signal snow or just cold? I talked to a couple of my friends that know a bit more about this, and if the polar vortex were simply being displaced southward, it would be probably more cold than anything else. But the fact that it's splitting puts perhaps snow into play. What we don't know is, in terms of specific geographic areas, does it mean that it's, you have to look at it. How deep into the cold air are you going to be? If you're too deep into the cold, dry air, and then everything is further south. Of course, if you're in the mid-Atlantic states and in the southeast and in the deep south, this might be what you want if you're a snow lover. I don't know if is that going to be the outcome of all of this, or is it going to be something where you get a cold air that penetrates southward into the U.S., gets down into the northern mid-Atlantic states, or a little bit further south than that, and you set up a frontal boundary, a general frontal boundary, where you get storms to move along it, and it winds up being a snow event after snow event, and just basically setting up a bowling alley. The wonderful thing about weather, in my view, is that it's always a mystery, and you can enjoy watching it play out, and more importantly, learning from it. That I think is really the number one takeaway. These are opportunities to see things that you don't see very often, so it's a learning process. And it's a different approach when it comes to doing short range versus long range, obviously. The issues that you deal with are different. You can make generalizations about the long range because no one's asking you a specific number. It'll be colder than average, warmer than average, snowier than average, less snowier than average, on and on it goes. As opposed to the short range, where you're basically trying to figure out as close as you can down to the nearest zip code where the rain-snow line is going to be. Those short range questions are always going to be there, regardless of the whatever extreme nature of the pattern or lack of extreme nature of a pattern that you're dealing with. So the next couple of weeks are going to be, I think, a lot of fun to watch to see how this all plays out. Let me just go to the teleconnections here, and we'll take a look at those, because they do tell a story. And I did put a post up on Patreon today regarding this, and with everything else that's going on in the stratosphere, with the stratospheric warming. We look at all of this, and I know I've been putting a lot of emphasis on the East Pacific Oscillation. For those of you who might be new and are wondering, what are you looking at? What is all this? So let me bring this up. Each one of these indices basically measures pressure changes in different geographic areas. The East Pacific, the EPO, East Pacific Oscillation, so it measures pressure changes in the East Pacific. The PNA, the Pacific North America Index, actually measures pressure changes both on the Pacific side of North America and on the Atlantic side. The North Atlantic Oscillation, pressure changes up in the North Atlantic. They all cover large geographic areas, and when we see these indices plotted up, what they're telling us is that when pressures are higher, when pressures are higher in the geographic regions that I mentioned, the respective EPO and NAO are going to be negative. In the instance that we have now, the North Atlantic Oscillation is showing higher than normal pressures in the geographic area in the North Atlantic. Therefore, we are seeing negative readings throughout the 16-day forecast period. Usually a pressure pattern like that is favorable for colder air in the eastern part of the United States, and sometimes it can mean snow, and it could mean snow and weather systems being usually further south than where they normally are. But the problem is that you've got these other two; these all kind of sort of interact with each other to some degree. The NAO, in my view, is preventing us from getting too warm here in the eastern part of the United States. The East Pacific oscillation right now is positive to strongly positive. That's the forecast for the next 16 days. So if that were alone in all of this, we would be seeing probably very warm temperatures here in the east. Again, but the NAO, I think, is offsetting this to a large degree. The Pacific North America Index measures the idea of a ridge in the west, trough in the east. And that is, when you have a ridge in the west, trough in the east, you can have a stormy situation, which is what we have now. You'll notice that the PNA is strongly positive. It goes somewhat negative for much of next week, only to go positive again as we move into the new year. So what I would say is the one to watch here going forward is going to be that EPO. This is the snapshot from the weather models from last night. As that event in the stratosphere unfolds, and then we wait patiently for the lag time, we're going to keep an eye on that East Pacific oscillation, because that's where I think you're going to probably see the most radical change in the pressure pattern that would drive colder air into the eastern United States. And you're going to see it come out of the models over a period of days. I don't think you're going to see it instantaneously on one run. If you do, you're going to have to wait for confirmation over a course of at least a week to make sure that it's real. But that, I think, is the best way to watch the situation unfolding with regards to the changes going forward. Okay, back to the board. Joe Rayo picked January 6th as his day. So let's see if Joe winds up being correct. Okay. Yeah, a bowling alley is something that a term that I've used, where you get one storm after another that just basically, if you're the 10 pin, it just keeps hitting the 10 pin. And there are a number of years like that come to mind. 93, 94 was like that from the end of January to the middle of March. It was every 3 days up here where I am. Every 3 days it was one storm after another after another. I think we had more than a dozen systems. 2 of them were sizable. The rest were all along the lines of 3 or 4 inches apiece. Some a little more than that, some a little less. But it was every 2 or 3 days, and we would have something that would leave some accumulating snow. 95, 96 would be an example of a bowling alley that lasted pretty much from November to April. You could probably look at 13, 14, and to some extent also 14, 15, where you get into these periods where it's just like it's one weather system after another, and you're kind of in the sweet spot because everything's sort of happening the same way. Charlie Baker's packing it in. Have a wonderful Christmas also, sir. I appreciate you being on here, and you're quite welcome. I'm glad everybody, get something out of this. I wanted this. I've always been my view to try to make this channel a little bit different from the standard weather channel. I want to talk weather. I want to talk about it in a bit more of a technical way, because I think there's a lot of people that are interested in it, and they want to have a better idea of how the atmosphere works. And I'm very glad that it's been receptive by my audience in the way that it has, and I appreciate it oh so greatly. Let's see, just running through the last of the chat because we're 45 minutes in here. William Hoover, by what you show, map looks like cold air coming out of Hudson Bay on the east side. If so, when the north gets east, gets its coldest temp. It can set up that way, Bill, depending on a few other things happening. But if with that negative NAO like that, for example, if you had the EPO in play, you could get a big high to come down from almost due north. We get that Hudson Valley wind, and that's when you see places in upstate New York that go to that go to 30 below, 40 below up at Saranac Lake, Lake Placid. That sort of thing hasn't happened in a while, but it used to happen a bit more frequently when I remember, back in the 70s. There were a number of instances where that happened, but that kind of opens the spigots to bring cold air from the Greenland side. The President's Day blizzard, Michael Azera of 79 during an extremely, that was brutally cold. That was 3 weeks where, as I remember, New York City temperatures for daytime highs had a real struggle. It didn't get above freezing, and there was a stretch in there where the temperature didn't even get much above the low 20s for daytime highs. And we had a lot of nights where the lows were down in the single numbers, even and to near zero. That was quite a cold stretch indeed. Now, I don't know what was going on higher up in the atmosphere. We didn't really have that sort of information at our fingertips, and we certainly didn't have models that produced maps that we could just punch up on a screen. Those were the days of paper maps. So it would have been interesting to see what it was like. At least the folks that are going to be doing forecasting 20 or 30 years from now are going to have all of this to look back on from what we have right now. And let's see. Learning at the feet of the master. Scott Olson, you're very kind. There's a lot of stuff I don't know, just to be clear. There's Joe Rayo says it best, kind of describing what we do as sort of general practitioners as opposed to specialists. And we know maybe a little bit about everything, and maybe we know a lot about a few things. And certainly on the let's call it the basic level, but we're not the specialists that deal with the long range and the stratosphere and all these other things. But you're very kind to say that. I'm glad that like I said, you're getting some something out of this. Works for me. Let's see. Difficult time understanding teleconnections. Matthew Warman. Okay, so I won't do all three, but you know what? Let's just do one. I'll give you a link to take a look at. Okay, so 1 second here. Let's bring this up. All right, so let's get back to that teleconnection page. This is the website where we get these things from. Okay, and if you look down here at the bottom, you'll see latest forecast from Teleconnections, and there is a link. There's also somewhere on this site, in fact, the data using just there's a link here somewhere that actually tells you the geographic. In fact, right here, daily forecasts, where it says daily forecast of teleconnection indices for the last 120 days. All right. So it's calculated, for example, the North Atlantic Oscillation looks at the pressure changes that go on in the geographic area, 35 degrees north to 45 degrees north. All right. So basically from the latitude of Virginia to up to Maine, all right, going east, and from 70 west, so just offshore, all the way out to 10 west. And then it takes another geographic area into account, the area between 55 north and 70 north, and the area between 70 west and 10 west. Okay, and it subtracts the pressure, the changes in pressure of one area minus the changes in pressure in the other, and you come up with a value. So what it is doing is, for example, if the pressures in the area from 35 to 45 north and 70 west to 10 west is low, okay? If the pressures are low and then the pressures from 55 to 70 north and 70 west to 10 west, if those pressures are high, okay, that's when you have a block. If you've got a higher pressures up between 55 north and 70 north, and between 70 west and 10 west, so basically we're talking about from, say, the shorelines from the Canadian Maritimes, from Newfoundland northward toward Greenland, all the way across to the Atlantic to Scandinavia. When you have higher than normal pressures in that area, so you're subtracting a higher number from the lower number to the west, okay? So you come up with a negative value. So that's why when we say that the NAO is negative, it is giving us a signature of blockiness, and that's what we're seeing here, okay? And we basically calculate, if you go on this page, I will put the link up on the chat here, and you can read through it. It's a little technical, but that really is what it boils down to. And at the end of the day, the teleconnections are a tool. They are not something that you can't use them as silver bullets. None of the stuff you could use as silver bullets. Frank Sorolla, the Madden-Julian oscillation is something. I know what it is. I see people talking about it all the time. It isn't something that since I'm not a long-range person, so I'm not going to look at that in terms of trying to solve my short-range forecast issues. So, but I do read what people say, and I understand that the understanding about phases, I believe 8, 1, and 2 are cold and snowy in the eastern part of the United States. The Madden-Julian oscillation, folks, basically measures the extent of winds and tropical activity and the oscillation of that activity across the Indian Ocean into the westernmost Pacific. And there are certain phases of that oscillation of wind and moisture and dry, moist air and dry air that are connected to weather patterns down the pipeline. And so it's been observed that when certain patterns happen there in that part of the world, it ultimately winds up having an impact on the weather across North America. Sometimes it favors warmer weather in the east. Sometimes it favors colder weather in the east. I do see when people are talking about it, but I don't use it as a day-to-day forecast tool because it's really not something that I'm not going to make a decision regarding rain or snow in a short-term forecast based on what the Madden-Julian oscillation is doing. But it would be interesting to know if that oscillation is going into a phase that is positive for cold and snow at the same time that we're having this stratospheric warming event. So that's something I'll probably be looking for to see if anybody posts about that. Okay, so here's what we're going to do, Bobby Whitaker. Thank you for asking me this question. For the next 4 days, what is my schedule going to be? Okay, so look, all of us are going to be doing something family-wise, I'm sure, and the weather is calming down a bit, so there's not going to be a whole lot going on. So what I will, I have family coming in tomorrow. My kids are all coming home. My grandson's coming for a visit, which is great, and I've got the next 3 days off. So what I may do at some point, if I do pop up for a live stream tomorrow or Sunday, I'm going to tell you right now, it ain't going to be 53 minutes. All right, it's going to be short. Probably keep it. I know I say this and I wind up going longer, but I'm probably going to try to keep it to 15, 20 minutes tops. Because I don't want to get all wrapped up in it, and you don't want to get all wrapped up in it, especially if there's no storm involved. So perhaps tomorrow and Sunday, if there's something with regards to whatever may happen or may not happen Sunday night, we'll spend a little time on it, give a general outlook about what's going on, and then moving from there. And we'll probably take that right through Christmas Eve. Christmas Day, I may actually have more time on my hands because I'm going to be working. So you may see me pop up at night, and then we'll get back to a regular, a regular schedule once we go past Christmas. And I hope everybody takes some time to enjoy themselves. Really, at the end of the day, this is a nice time, especially if you've got kids at home. Enjoy it, because if you've got young ones at home, you wake up one day and guess what? They are grown and gone. And that's kind of where I am right now. All my kids are grown. I got 2 of them married. One will probably be married eventually, and she's still in school. But the bottom line is, the time goes by quick, and you wake up one day and all of a sudden you got grandkids, which is really pretty awesome. So that pretty much leaves it at that. So let me close tonight with my other poem, okay? And I put this up a couple of years ago. This is, look, I want to put this in a nice way. I can't imagine anybody having a problem with this. If, these days everybody is so sensitive and so touchy and so narcissistic. So I am going to exercise my own right of narcissism here. This is my poem, and it's my channel. So are you ready? So enjoy. 'Twas the night before Christmas, intellectuals stated. The concept of God is completely outdated. Christmas, a word that should not be spoken. The idea of faith is essentially broken. So let's call it something completely generic, as not to offend or make one hysteric. For God is something that just isn't real. Except in the weak, it has an appeal. But Joe will inform that Christmas is much more than a casual holiday lunch. It is, that actually should read a bit better. But Joe will inform that Christmas is much more than a casual holiday lunch. It's not a new iPhone, it's not a new tie, nor is it something based on a lie. Christmas is for those who search out for hope, for those who seek shelter or trying to cope, or feeling life's pain, which to relieve, and dealing with loss and trying to grieve. Christmas itself is God's special way of saying, I'm here for you every day, offering comfort, joy, whatever your plight. People look closely. In life, there is light. And a Merry Christmas to all of you going into this weekend. Please travel safely, have fun, enjoy your family, enjoy your time, and we will be here. Okay? Merry Christmas to you.